growing up and finding yourself and finding who you are while you're simultaneously building a brand and a business and a following based off of your personality.
Hey guys, thanks so much for listening to the Bearded Talk podcast. It means so much to me. I'm super grateful for all of you that are listening and learning and furthering your craft. You know, it's something really cool. Something that I thought of before we get into the interview today was a friend of mine just emailed me and was like, hey, can we chat? And I was like, okay, cool. And he's a wedding professional as well. And he's a great guy. Like, I really support him and enjoy him. But it's just kind of funny that he asked me if we could chat. And for me, I always think that I am going to go to the principal's office when somebody's like, hey, can we talk? And so I'm just like, oh no, like, what did I do? And we had worked a wedding together a while back. And I was like, oh no, did I say something? And so he calls me and we schedule time to chat. And he calls me. And the entire conversation, though, was just about how I do social media in my business and how do I, grow a following and something like that. And honestly, my first answer was, you got to listen to the Bearded Talk. Like, there are now over 20 episodes now of free advice from industry experts, people who are making it happen. And there's advice on everything from pricing to goal setting to growing your following to getting the clients you want to making your clients happy. Like, I'm at that place now where I'm just going to start pushing the podcast. It's free. And the reality is that you guys know this, is that there isn't some easy fast track, but at the same time, I would put it on to anybody that it's pretty easy to listen to a podcast, guys. Like, put it in your headphones and listen, and it's free. Like, the action is up to you. And so for people looking for information and knowledge, guys, we have to listen to these shows if you want to become the person that you want to be and the professional you want to be. Simple as that. Like, the free content is out there. And I learned everything I learned about photography from YouTube when I started. And that was when YouTube wasn't even big. So, it can be done, guys. You just got to pursue, you have to pursue the things that are around you. Don't trade the forest for the trees. So anyway, that was a little bit of a rant, but just some advice. If you know somebody that could benefit from the podcast, share it with them. Or if you haven't joined the Patreon yet, seriously, it's $3. And I'm giving away all my editing techniques. I'm showing people, you can ask any business question there. Like, it's so cheap, and there's no like non-secret thing. Like, anything can be, revealed. And so just super, super important today. So yeah, but for today, we are talking with Hope Taylor, who is an amazing wedding photographer and senior portrait photographer. And I've never known anybody who had such a tribe when it came to senior portraits, but she has some knowledge going on, and just like everything she knows is going to be effective for any business person. And so I wanted to have her on, talk to her a little bit. And she has a unique story where she didn't go to college, at least at the beginning. And so just want to dive into her story. So without further ado, here's Hope Taylor. Hope, how's it going? How's your week going?
It's going really, really good. How have you been?
Good. Just, I'm sure you know this, the fall is insane with weddings and stuff like that. I think I have like 9 in September and 8 in October. So I'm just like, I'm at my computer if I'm not shooting, and if I'm not at my computer, I'm shooting. So it's crazy.
Yes, can totally relate. I definitely don't have that many, but I have, I think, 5 September and then 4 October. And actually, I have like 5 November, which is weird for the season here in Virginia. So yeah, but it's been crazy, but I'm thankful for it. I'm just ready for December to roll around here soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Are weddings your main income generator, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so weddings, and then senior portraits, and then the education side of my business too. So I have like three little outlets of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit more, kind of fill in the gaps about yourself and how you got into photography, and then a little bit about your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like this is always a long story because I have a little bit of like a complicated.
That's okay. We like complicated.
Okay, sweet. Perfect. So I started my business when I was actually in high school. And so I was a sophomore, which means I was 14 when I took a photojournalism class that my high school offered. And I didn't realize that you had to have a DSLR camera in order to take the class. And so once I found out that fact, I, for some reason, thought that my little digital camera was a DSLR camera because that's how little I knew about photography at the time. And so I went into class with all this confidence that this little digital camera I found was a DSLR. And then I was fully embarrassed in front of the whole class when I was told by the teacher that I was the only one that didn't have a DSLR camera. And so I convinced my parents to get one for me so I could continue that class. And my love for photography kind of started there. And then throughout my junior year, I continued to just do portraits for friends for fun. And then over that summer, I was working a part-time job at a retail store, and I just felt stuck, and I felt like there was something more that I could be doing than just folding clothes. And I just knew that I wanted to do something for myself that I really enjoyed and didn't make me miserable and make me dread going to work every day. And so I decided to take my camera back off of the shelf that it had been sitting on for way too long and started doing pictures for friends much more frequently. And by the beginning of my senior year, I had gotten my business license. I made things officially official. I was paying taxes, and I did school part-time as a senior. So I left school every day at 10 a.m. and my business went full-time that year. So I was 17 when my business went full time. And then as my business was growing, my desire to go far away for college was quickly declining because I didn't want to leave this business behind that I had been working so hard on. So I applied to 7 colleges. I initially wanted to go to Savannah College of Art and Design. And then a few months later, I decided I wanted to go to JMU. And then a few months later, I committed to Radford for business because it was the closest school to me that I had applied for. It offered everything I wanted as far as business degree. And I was going to be able to hopefully still shoot weddings on the weekends. And so I was committed to that school. But as graduation rolled around, I just had the most unsettled feeling in my heart. And I don't know if anybody listening can relate to that, but I just felt unsettled and there was no peace. And I really couldn't figure out why. And it's always stressful when those seasons are around. And you're like, I don't know why I feel no peace, but there's just no peace. And I, a couple of weeks later, went to a photography conference. It was, or not a conference, it was a workshop. Natalie Frank, I think she spoke on this podcast a couple of weeks back.
Yes, she did.
Love her. She's the best. And so I was at Natalie Frank's Bayside workshop with Krista Jones and Caroline Logan, who is a wedding photographer that's a year older than me and was basically Beyonce in my eyes at the time. She was attending the workshop, or not attending, but there to assist and kind of help with setup. And I had no idea she was going to be there. So I walked in and I was completely starstruck that Caroline was in the room because she had just made the decision to go full time instead of going away to college. And so I wanted to pick her brain, but I also didn't want to be super obnoxious. And so I just went up and introduced myself. And after a little bit, we got into that conversation. And she told me that the piece of advice that made her make her decision was that Justin and Mary Marantz told her that whatever you do and wherever you go, be all there. And that just kind of really hit home for me at the time because I was so stressed over the concept of balancing college and that workload alongside of a business that I wanted to be able to run full time. And that just really hit home with me. So a week later, I went home and I told my parents that I didn't want to go away to school anymore. And I revoked my admission and decided to take my business full time that day. And so that was 4 years ago, or 3.5-ish years ago, which is just crazy to me to think about. So I would be a senior in college right now if I had gone away to school, which is just crazy. So now I'm a full-time wedding and senior portrait photographer, and I'm also an educator. So I host workshops, I do speaking and all those fun things that I absolutely love. So it's been a crazy, crazy ride, but that's kind of how I got to where I am. Hopefully that catches everybody up a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. That's like my my main story is just like about you. Is I heard this at the event that Justin and Mary Marantz hosted, and I was like, who is this girl who is, 20 years old and, killing it? And I was, at least for me, I know a lot of entrepreneurs feel like, we're behind. And when we see somebody else, and I kind of got that sense, I was like, oh man, she's killing it even earlier than we are. But at the same time, I was just like, no, like this this job can be for everybody. This job can be for any age, and as long as the passion and the talent is there. And so I really appreciated seeing you up there and hearing that story, and I appreciate hearing it again. So that's really cool. What was some of that transition like? Were your parents supportive, or were they a little bit nervous? And how'd you handle some of that, like, situational flack, if you will? We'll call it that. I'm sure from people that were like, "Are you sure you don't want to go to school? Are you sure?"
Oh, yeah, definitely. So there was definitely different opinions from everybody that I encountered. My teachers had different opinions than my parents, and my parents had different opinions than their friends, and their friends had different opinions than my friends. And everybody had, a different thing to say about this decision that I was making. So when I was making that decision, didn't really consult anybody except for Caroline Logan. I was like, I don't want to hear anyone's opinion who hasn't been in this exact position, because I think that it's such a unique situation to be somebody who, graduated with an advanced degree and has always wanted to pursue, a degree or a typical corporate job. And that was always me growing up. And so now to suddenly have this 180 shift of wanting to pursue entrepreneurship and a creative business. I mean, anybody in my life was just kind of like, their heads were cocked sideways. Like, what is this girl doing? And so I think that it was during the decision, it wasn't as hard because I wasn't seeking everybody's opinion, but after the decision was a whole different story. So, my mom was very, very supportive all the way throughout the decision. My mom is one of my absolute best friends, and she was an entrepreneur herself. She made cakes and had a little bit of a bakery out of our home the whole time I was growing up. And so she pursued that herself. I helped her build that business when I was younger, because I've always loved marketing and business. And so she knew that that was where my heart was and that that's what I wanted to do. And she was going to blindly support me no matter what. And I love her for that. But my dad, he was equally supportive, and he is just so proud of me now. And I think that every stranger he comes in contact with, he tells them about me. But at the time, he was in the military. And so he waited to get his bachelor's degree until he was in his 30s, which was really hard for him because he had kids by that time. And it was just a whole different season of life to go to college. And so he didn't want to see me follow in that same path because he had such a rough time doing it later in life. And so for him, he wanted to support me pursuing a business, but he also wanted me to continue my education. So the compromise that we came to initially was that I would do a semester of community college at our local college here, with a little bit of a lighter workload, and then continue to pursue my business full time. So that's actually what I did for one semester. I did a full college course load for one semester here at a local college. But during that semester, I had workshops like the Bayside workshop I just mentioned, and conferences that I had paid for with flights that I had paid for that were more than the cost of the class and the textbooks. And the professors some of them were trying to fail me. I had straight A's and they were trying to fail me for attendance and things like that. And there was just so much conflict that came along with trying to balance both of them. And during that first semester, I actually booked 15 weddings for my first year as a full-time wedding photographer. So after that semester, I sat my dad back down and I was like, okay, hey, so I've got a lot of work coming up that I really don't think it's practical for me to balance school. So will you give me one semester of no school to show you what I can do? Because to that point, I had always been doing school and business. I had never had the chance to do just business, except for summers in between classes. And so I had never experienced what it was like to put 100% of myself into my business. I had no idea what that would look like as far as work hours or my schedule or my income. I had no idea what it was going to look like for me. So he agreed. And he let me take one semester off of school. And I guess the best way I can explain that is that I haven't gone back since then. So I definitely had a little bit of not controversy or conflict with my parents, but there was some compromise that had to be made within, the time I was making that decision, just to make sure that everybody was happy. But it worked out really, really well. But on the other side of that, one of the things, if you heard me speak at the event, was that I was at a public high school with a lot of kids who were they weren't necessarily not supportive, but they just didn't understand the concept of owning a business or wanting to work or wanting to chase after a dream. They were just kind of in the party phase of typical high schoolers, prom and homecoming and pep rallies and all of those things. And I skipped almost all of those things to pursue my business. And so there were a lot of people who had a lot of negative things to say. And I think if anybody listening has kids that are in middle or high school, then you know that social media can be a huge source of just bullying bullying and negativity and horrible things being said. And that was one of the things that I dealt with a lot throughout that season, was people who were mocking my business and, posting inappropriate things using my hashtags, and a lot of like, who does this girl think she is type comments. And I dealt with that all through high school and all throughout the, making that decision. And a lot of those people turn around and want to be my best friend now. And that's just kind of how it happens. But it was definitely a tough season of people being disapproving and judgmental and just wanting to tear down something that they just didn't understand. And so it was definitely really, really rough.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I've struggled with that as well. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, as far as people who don't understand and are just kind of like, they don't take you seriously. And it can be so hard when you're beginning this phase, and especially in high school, because you're interacting with these people every day. And I know for a lot of entrepreneurs, at least for myself, I was working a full-time job, and somebody on our staff who was pretty high up said, I'm surprised I did some work for that job, and they're like, I'm surprised the project this week didn't have adammason.com on it. And they were just kind of like teasing, and I was like, and I felt kind of bad because I was giving everything to this job, and was very devoted, and at the same time was getting made fun of, for going hard at something that I am passionate about. And I think that that's the same thing for you, is that people just don't think it's going to work, or I wonder if like Taylor Swift's friends didn't think that she would get famous or something like that. And she still deals with haters, so it's okay. We're in a good company. So
yes. So it's really funny that you used Taylor Swift as an example, because my mom and I were talking this week about how it's so strange to start a business when you're 16 or 17 years old, because you're growing up and finding yourself and finding who you are, while you're simultaneously building a brand and a business and a following based off of your personality. And so she was comparing me to the country Taylor Swift 4 years ago that was, super innocent, compared to like the rock star Taylor Swift now. Not that I'm not innocent, but I used to dress in like full J. Crew professional business outfits and like Lily Pulitzer. And I was overcompensating for my professionalism at the age of 16, compared to now I'm finding myself as, a 21-year-old young adult. And it's just so funny. It's a struggle and like a dynamic that most people don't have to think about or worry about in their business.
Yeah, totally. Do you think that I think for your case and other entrepreneurs too, I wonder, and this wasn't the whole goal of this conversation, was to talk about the haters, but it's a good conversation because I feel like a lot of people deal with just folks who don't understand, and it can oftentimes come off very mean. And then at the same time, you experience some very mean things in high school just through social media and people kind of mocking you. And so, do you think that I have this theory of like the iceberg, and so people only see the top 10% of the iceberg, and I think that's for businesses as well. And most of the time, it's a good thing. Like, people only see the top 10% of Hope Taylor Photography, and but there's so much more to your personality and your story and who you are. And even back then in high school, there's so much more to how hard you're working and how all the struggles of just, can I do this? Do I want to do this? Is this the right decision? Because it's not like you weren't questioning, And so, I think that there is, I don't know, I wish people would just like understand, like, hey, there's more going on for people. And it's something I've had to learn as well. And from everything from just pricing, like a really business kind of thing, to somebody's personality, and be like, hey, like, what if they have student loans they need to pay off? Maybe that's why they're charging more. Or what if they, are setting up their income differently? And that's something that a lot of photographers are like, oh, this person's charging X, so I'll charge X. And, there's so much more going on. And so, yeah, I'm so sorry that that happened to you in high school, but hopefully we can all just go on our Taylor Swift tangents from now on.
Yes. No, and I think that's such a good point to make, that you only see 10% of what's actually happening. And I actually, over the weekend, was with two of my closest friends who are also photographers themselves. And we were just having these conversations that, and I was talking to Jordan and Amy Demos about this as well, that our industry is just so unique that we create like little mini celebrities and we idolize people within our own industry. And like, that does not happen in the corporate world or in most industries, but there are leaders in our industry and speakers in our industry that we all look up to and admire. And I was saying that as I've kind of transitioned into a place of being an educator and being a speaker and having a large following, it's so strange to have people look at your following on Instagram or look at your Instagram feed and just assume that you have it all together when they really are only seeing the 10%. And it's just such a strange thing to experience because I'm living my life, on the inside. So obviously I'm seeing 100%. And then I'm encountering people at conferences and on Instagram and through podcasts like this who are only seeing 10%. And they look at my life wishing that theirs looks like mine or, idolizing a decision that I made, and they're not experiencing the repercussions or the negative side of those things. And I always just I don't love the concept of somebody looking at anybody else's life and wishing theirs looks like that person's, because I think that there's so many important reasons that everybody's life is so different and that we're all on different paths. And just that concept in our industry of idolizing people just breaks my heart sometimes, because the comparison that happens on social media and the way that people talk down to themselves and think that they're lesser because of things they see on social media and because of that comparison just breaks my heart, because I just wish that there was a way to show the 100% so people knew that there was no reason to be comparing and feeling bad about where you are, because we're struggling with the same things. We're just struggling in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like just imposter syndrome and, think being jealous or just idolizing the way of somebody else's life, like everybody goes through that, even if we are... It's like at different levels, if you will, I had somebody call me yesterday and they were like, Adam, I feel like you're everywhere and your social media is everywhere. And I was like, what? Like, I feel like, I'm having to work twice as hard to keep up with the people I look up to. And, there's a balance at the same time for those folks who maybe, I think a lot of people need permission to like pursue or to keep going, or like they need somebody to be like, listen, like the path to get here isn't necessarily complicated. It's, it is work. And, but you can give yourself permission to just go for it, and I think one of the things I admire about you is that you somehow gave yourself permission early. And I think a lot of people don't give themselves permission, and then they wait a year and say, oh, in a year I'll go to the gym every day, or in a year I will pursue this photography, or in a year I will invite all my friends over once a week and start practicing my headshots or whatever. And it's like, they see an Instagram post that day and they're like, oh, I'll never be that person. I should just, stop playing or stop. I said stop playing because I think of guitar. So I used to play guitar, still do. And that was a big part of my life. And another thing that people think you won't do anything with, but you would see somebody who was really, really good and you just be like, we'd make the joke that we should just quit. And that's just a joke, like we shouldn't, we should keep pursuing it. And if you quit, you're not going to get anywhere. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more business-wise. What does your year look like? Large percentage weddings or seniors in education? How does that divide itself up? And what education stuff are you really passionate about teaching right now?
Absolutely. So right now, I would say my business is probably on the photography side, about 50-50 wedding seniors. I told myself this year I actually wasn't going to have a senior spokesmodel team because I was wanting to really put more of myself into the wedding side of my business. And then I was like, you know what? I'm getting so many emails from girls who are disappointed. I'm going to open up a spokesmodel application program, but I'm only going to choose like 8 girls instead of the 12 that I typically have. And then I ended up, long story short, picking 19. And so I have a really large spokesmodel team and really big senior program this year, which I love. And then, which just wasn't what I thought my 2017 would look like going into it, but that happens. And then I also have, I think, 18 weddings for this year, which is really exciting. So I would say 50-50 workload with both of those. And then education-wise, education is actually where my heart is. I always kind of joke with my friends that if I never picked up a camera again, but I got to still teach, I'd be totally okay with it. The business side of marketing and strategy and launches and all of those things, my heart is completely in those areas. And so I am actually working on some courses behind the scenes. I won't go too in depth about those, but I'm super excited about that. I'm working on my workshop schedule for 2018, and I'm super pumped for those. I actually changed my workshops last year. They were just 1-day senior photography workshops, and this year I launched 2-day wedding and senior photography workshops, and they all sold out within just a couple of days, which was such a blessing. So I'm really looking forward to launching those 2018 dates, and I'm also restructuring one-on-one coaching for 2018. So I'm kind of in the process of just restructuring the education side of my business. It's definitely a season of transition for me, but it's all really exciting transition. So I'm looking really forward to it.
That's awesome. Tell me more about, I know that you have a kind of tribe of seniors and you've been doing this for a while. Tell me more about how that idea came up to kind of build this just senior. I feel like you're the best senior photographer I know, and also,
oh my gosh, thank you.
And also have the largest kind of following. And it's an interesting thing that I think a lot of photographers don't look into or think, oh, we can't make enough money, or is that weird to photograph seniors in high school or whatever. And walk me through that whole process and just kind of how you helped build your own tribe of those seniors that are supporting you and kind of doing the word of mouth for you. It's like a Hope Taylor street team, if you will.
I love the way that you worded that. That's kind of how I teach about it at my workshops, actually. So I was, like I mentioned, a senior in high school as my business was growing. So I always like to preface this conversation by saying that I was a senior in high school, literally surrounded by seniors in high school. So it was just kind of a natural transition for me to begin photographing my friends and photographing seniors. And I just fell in love with that because I could relate to them. We were literally in the same season of life. And there was just a connection with those girls that was deeper than the other photographers in my area who are, moms, and they are in a different season of life. And it was just kind of a different experience because of the fact that I was literally in their shoes. And so I started photographing my friends. That's just kind of how it started when I was a junior and when I was a senior. And then I started offering, quote unquote, senior portrait sessions and kind of started naming them that. And then I started my hashtag HTP seniors. And so as that kind of evolved, the girls that I would photograph would get really excited about working with me, and then they would use that hashtag, and it kind of created a little tribe on Instagram and on social media. And when I teach at workshops, I always say that when it comes to seniors, the best way to bring them in and make them want to work with you is to create FOMO, which is the fear of missing out. And you want them to look at the experience with you and look at all of the people who are getting to work with you, and to look at that tribe of girls and be like, wow, I'm really missing out if I'm not able to be a part of that. And so that was kind of the way that I wanted to market, not in like a mean or like sneaky way, but I just wanted it to look like more than just a senior portrait session. I wanted it to look like an experience and like a tribe of girls that was so much more than just photos. And so there's kind of two outlets of that. So the first outlet of that is that I wanted to market it as an experience. Like I just mentioned, I wanted it to be more than just photos. I wanted them to see behind the scenes of us shooting together and jamming to music in the car between locations and stopping for snacks, and me hosting spokesmodel events and studio parties. And I wanted it to just look like this really fun tribe of people that they wanted to be a part of, not just somebody who takes pretty photos. And then the other outlet of that is that I wanted to market personally, and I wanted the girls to feel an attachment and a connection to me because of the way that I talk about myself online and my story online, and I market myself. And so I wanted them to feel a connection to me on a personal level, not just on a business to client level. And I wanted them to want to work with me specifically because that separates me from everybody else in my area by default. And there are a lot of senior photographers in my area because it's a very popular concept here in Virginia. And so I had a lot of competition, and I wanted to separate myself by making it so that I marketed myself as a person and as a personality. And that is who my seniors connected to and wanted to work with more so than just the fact that they liked the way my images looked. And so I marketed an experience and I marketed myself as a person. And by default, those two things separate me from everybody else in my area and kind of create a tribe of a specific type of client, because I marketed in a way that attracted only my ideal client, because only certain types of people are going to be attracted to that type of experience and are going to be attracted to my personality. And so then it ended up that the tribe of people I was working with were all like-minded. They all had similar personalities. personalities and similar interests. And because of that, it just kind of exploded into this amazing group of ladies. And when I started my Spokesmodel program, I was able to bring in those girls that would stick with me for a whole year and represent my business and bring in more like-minded ladies. And it just kind of was a domino effect of building that over the last 3 years.
That is so cool. Tell me a little bit more about the Spokesmodel program, and and you don't have to reveal too much, but do seniors get something out of it, or kind of what's the process for them to join and then, hopefully spread the word of mouth?
Yeah, so I think that I like to always preface this by saying that Spokesmodel programs are done in so many ways. I think there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of different ways that Spokesmodel programs are structured. And so I don't ever like to talk about this without prefacing that there's no right or wrong way to do this. But for me, I, again, wanted my Spokesmodel team to have an experience and to kind of become a family of supporting each other, completely separate from the concept of being a Hope Taylor spokesmodel. And I wanted to build the entire program off of that concept. And so I opened an application the fall of their junior year. So they're still a junior, but I want to get them on my team before they even get into their senior year. So I open the application then, and then I have girls apply. So I have past seniors help me promote that. I have my past spokesmodels help me promote that. And I bring in applications from girls that are all around the area where I am. So typically within like an hour of me is the applications that I receive. And then I will select girls from those applications based off of their personalities and their interaction with their hobbies or, different communities, like if they're a dancer or a cheerleader or they're involved in sports. And I choose them based off of their bubbly personality, their interaction on social media, if they're present on social media. And I choose them based off of not their dedication to my brand, but I want to choose girls who have been really, really excited about being one of my spokesmodels, not just that want to be a spokesmodel. Because again, we have so many senior photographers in this area that there are dozens of spokesmodel programs around me. And I want to be fair to the girls who have been really excited about my business specifically. And so I try to choose girls based off of those things. And so then I have a team of girls, and in the past years, I think my first team was 8 girls, and then it was 12, and then it was 14, and now it's 19 because I have no self-control and I just love them all so much. And so I have 19 girls this year, and we do a ton of things throughout the year. So they actually pay me a fee to be a part of the program, but that fee is the only thing that they pay me for the entire year, and it just covers the cost of their senior session. But then they also get to participate in like meet and greet parties and style shoots, and they're used as models for all of my workshops and educational events. And then they also receive mini sessions, complimentary hair and makeup. They get to be a part of like holiday events and group activities and group shoots. And there's just so many different things that we do across the time that they're on my team. And their only requirement is to share about me on social media a certain number of times each month. And then to also bring their friends in, and they get incentives for their friends that book me while mentioning their name as a referral. So it's a really, really fun program. And I just love having all of the girls get to know each other and build those friendships and those relationships completely separate from me. And also getting to meet all of their friends by having them bring in those referrals. It's just a really cool way to structure kind of a tribe of ladies that are then going to also benefit your business.
Yeah, that is incredible. Like that is so, that's genius, obviously. And like, also I just think about, in 2 to 10 years, maybe these girls are going to get married and they're going to want a wedding photographer. Yes. And I'm just like, Hope is just holding out for that long-term payoff. And that is amazing. That's awesome. And I think it's a cool opportunity because I feel like a lot of, those girls get to learn a lot in those situations with you. I think it's not even everything I've learned from being on a film set or a photo set is like, it's not just modeling per se. Is like those girls are kind of learning how businesses go and how you do your business. And I think like watching an entrepreneur is super valuable as well. And so that's in addition to the product that they get and, getting to hang out. I think that's really cool and that's really smart. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that when you market personally and you market, your personality, that you also have to be that same person in real life. And I think that I get to show those girls that, and I get to like talk to them and speak life into them and talk to them about their college decisions and what they want to pursue after school. And, my hope is that I can kind of pour into them and be a positive influence in addition to, all of the fun parts of it. But it's definitely just a fun way to connect to those girls and be a part of of a hard season of their life. And so it's awesome. I absolutely love it.
That's really cool. I think it's funny that like anytime you say you hope to do something is a pun. So, that's terrible, but whatever.
No, it's totally fine. I get it all the time. It is pretty funny.
But also too, just kind of like you said, one thing you touched on that I just really loved was just kind of being in a space where it is a tough time for them. Like nobody, I don't know if that's the first person, maybe because I've never been a girl, and I don't think I'm going to be, but, like high school's hard. And I think people don't understand that. And there's so much going on in a girl's mind and how we process emotions. And, I love that you kind of view that as, like a goal to kind of be in their lives and step into that gap. I think that's really cool.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Is there, are there any tips to kind of, because I think your personality matches your brand 100%. Like we see your photos and we see their website, and I've heard you speak, but it's like, no, like her voice really is as high as it is in the Instagram captions.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, as much as you read it in. And so like, are there any, very, very basic tips that you would give somebody that, I know I went through the struggle of like, should I be a brand or a person? And a lot of my clients were like, Adam, we booked you for you, like we love your work, but we wanted to spend time with you. And I'm one of those people that has a hard time feeling like believing that people would want to spend time with me, but that's my own personal thing. What would your advice be to somebody that's, knows that they want to have that personal connection with clients? Because maybe some people don't, but I know that for you and I, that's been very beneficial. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite topics to speak on because I think that it's so important and sometimes it's overlooked because there is so much fear that comes with the concept of putting yourself out there in a personal way. Because what if people don't like me? And what if people don't care about these things I'm saying? And what if I get backlash? And I think there's so much fear that goes along with that idea that is holding a lot of people back from really marketing themselves as a personality. And for me, like I mentioned, the number one reason that I started doing that is that I wanted to separate myself from all of the, women and men in my area who had been doing photography for 20 plus years because I was breaking into a brand new market at the age of 17. And I knew that there had to be something that separated me. And I just wanted my personality to be that thing because then nothing can ever go wrong because it's not like I'm going to fall off the face of the earth and then my business is going to continue and it's all going to fall apart because my personality isn't there anymore. And so I knew that if I just marketed with my personality, it was going to be a consistent way to market. And it was never going to change. It was going to be steady throughout. And so that was why I started that idea. But now there's so much value that comes along with your clients connecting with you on a personal level and booking you and investing in you for that reason. And Caitlin James is always the example I use for this because she charges $10,000+ for her weddings. And even she says like her images are obviously beautiful, but there's a lot of people that could do a similar style of work if they tried hard enough. And people book her because they want her at their wedding and they want Michael there and they want to hear about Boca and Evie. And there's so many things about Caitlin that they've fallen in love with specifically. And her personality and the way that she presents herself is the reason that they're willing to invest so much money. So on a very practical business side, it adds literal monetary value to what you can charge for your services because they want you there specifically, and there's only so much of you to go around. And then in another marketing concept, I kind of word it this way when I teach at workshops as well. When you present yourself as a business online, your clients that are following you don't view your business any different than they view every other business. So they view your business like they view Walmart, like they view Apple, like they view all of these huge corporations, because there's no difference between your business and those businesses in their mind, because they're not seeing the person behind the business. If all you're doing is sharing your work, you're just another business. You're just another photographer to them. And if they're looking at 10 to 15 different photographers to potentially book for their wedding or their portrait session, and every single one of them tells the same story of how they've had a camera in their hand since they were young, and they got into business at this age, and they've always loved capturing memories. Those things are great, and those things are all part of my story as well. But there's nothing that separates that story from the 10 to 15 other photographers who are sharing the same story. So now my About Me page doesn't talk anything about how I got started with photography. It talks about my favorite things. It talks about how I love chicken nuggets. It talks about where I've traveled and where I want to travel. It talks about my love for things that I do outside of my business. And it doesn't tell the story of how I got started, because if somebody read the story of how I got started, there's no way for a bride to personally connect to that, because she's not a photographer. She's not a business owner. There's no way for her to connect to the idea of starting a business. But if she loves Chick-fil-A and she loves peonies and she loves ice cream out of coffee mugs, then she's going to relate to me. And I am immediately elevated and separated from the 10 to 15 other photographers that she's looking at, simply because I marketed personally and she connected to me on a personal level. So I think that there's just so much value in it. And I think that a practical way to start implementing that is to sit down and write out everything about your ideal client. Write down a profile of your ideal client. Who is the bride that you would want to photograph every single day? How old is she? Where does she shop? What does she do in her spare time? What kind of dates do her and her fiance go on? Where has she traveled? What style of wedding is she going to have? Write down all of the things that you know about your ideal client, and then write down a ton of things about you and your life. What are your hobbies? What do you do in your spare time? Where do you shop? And any of the things that align about you with your ideal client, start sharing about those things on social media. So for me, I know that my ideal client is very professional and successful, but also has a really funny sense of humor. And so I talk about things like loving chicken nuggets and, just silly, quirky facts about myself. I also know that my brides shop at brands like Kate Spade and J. Crew. So even though I don't dress like that on a regular basis, I will incorporate those style of things in the way that I share online. And I will just incorporate all of these little stories and fun facts about me into the way that I share on social media. And because they align with who my ideal client is, they attract my ideal client to me. We connect on a personal level. I'm separated from everybody else they're looking at. They're willing to invest more in me, and then we start working together. And I just think that there is an invaluable amount of value in that concept that is just kind of overlooked because of the fear of it.
Yeah, totally. And it's, I think somebody, even after viewing your bio and your photos, but after they view your bio, they're going to see your photos differently. I think that's, people don't understand that. It's like, even if your photos look similar to somebody else's, the person that shot them, you relate to them and you're like, no, like Hope, she shot these. And, I think I didn't understand the personal branding thing until, similar to you, I just kind of wrote a little bit about me and the things I enjoy on my about section, which I didn't even want to write, because I wanted to just be a brand, I just wanted to be like an icon. And, anytime you work with people, you can't do that. You need to be a person. And, but I wrote something like, I love Apple products and my dream is to own a Tesla. And didn't think anything of it. I was like, nobody is going to read this. This is like not even, a thing. And a couple that owned a Tesla and has every iPhone or whatever, they're like basically nerds, emailed me and they're like, Adam, we love your work. And we also own a Tesla. How can we work with you? Like, it doesn't have to be, I think a lot of things for guys, at least, who listen to this, they think, oh, well, I'm not, I don't even know what brand I'm wearing, or I don't even know these things. And it's like, there are people just like you, there's an audience for everybody.
Absolutely. I think there's so much truth in that. And I think too, that I have so many stories like that of little things that I shared about myself that I thought nobody cared about. And now my wedding inquiries start with a sentence about how they can relate to those things. And they've connected to me on that level to the point that that's why they want to book me, which is just so crazy to think about, because it's like, who cares that I like sprinkled donuts? Who cares that I collect coffee mugs, but I don't drink coffee, so I eat ice cream out of them? Nobody cares about those things, but they actually do, because they can connect connect that on a personal level. And if they're looking at your Instagram feed and all they're seeing is your professional work, then they can't even connect to the fact that there's a human being behind that camera, because that's not how they're thinking. And so you need to make sure that you're including photos of yourself in your Instagram and in your social media. There needs to be a very obvious and consistent way that you incorporate yourself into your content marketing. And for me, that means that I post a photo of my face every 6 to 9 squares of my Instagram feed. And every time I say this, I know people are going to go scroll through my feed and think that I'm insane. But every 6 to 9 squares, there's a photo of me. And I think that there's just so much value in somebody scrolling through my feed and seeing all of my clients, but then knowing that that consistent face they're seeing is me. And that's the person that's taking all the other images that they're seeing. And just like you mentioned, when they see your face and they know who you are, they view your work differently and they're willing to invest more in it because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for you, I know, especially like I know a little bit more of your story, and we talked about this before the show, but things that are kind of going on in your life, and visiting doctors and stuff like that because of your Instagram story, and instantly it's you're even more connected to the photos again, and it's like this person is a person, and here's just how they see the world, and I think like that is super cool. Yeah. I totally forgot where I was going to go with this.
Totally fine. I do it all the time.
Yeah, that is really funny. Yeah. So a good example of this for people who are thinking like still like there's like another example of just how ridiculous this kind of personality can be is I need to have her on, but Madison Short, have you been following her Instagram stories lately?
Oh my gosh, I literally love her. I'm in a group message with her and like 7 other photographers, and we have all been supporting the Stan Rat situation.
Yeah, exactly. So for those who don't know, there's a photographer named Madison Short. She's a great photographer, right? But and her photos are awesome, and she's kind of around the Annapolis, DC, Baltimore area. And so she and her boyfriend, they live together, and they moved into this new apartment, I guess, a few months ago, and they've just had a rat problem, and she named the rat Stan. And so basically like every day for the past 4 weeks, I don't know, she has been posting about Stan the rat and this whole process. And on one hand, you feel bad, but she's even gotten inquiries from brides that are like, hey, I hope your rat situation is going fine. Can we book you for our wedding? And that even this thing, like even a rat can help you have a more personal brand on Instagram.
No, it's so true. And I'm going to have to text her and tell her that we just talked about this because she is going to die laughing.
Seriously.
But it's so true. When you humanize yourself and bring yourself down to the level of being a person, even though that sounds so silly because obviously we're humans, obviously we're people, but the fact that we own a business makes our clients view us like up on a little bit of a pedestal or, hard to relate to or hard to be friends with. And if we just bring ourselves down to that level of being like, hey, you have rats in your apartment? I have rats in my apartment. It sounds so silly, but it just allows us to connect on a personal, human, relatable, real level that adds value in just so many different ways.
Yeah, totally. I'm also thinking about, so another example for Madison is really funny is her favorite song, or at least supposedly her favorite song is
it really is Ignition Remix.
Ignition Remix by R. Kelly. And she posts pretty often that she's listening to it when she goes out or hangs out with friends or whatever, or they played at a wedding. And now like brides will have that specially played for her at the wedding. Which I think if there are any couples going to get married soon, this is a testament as well. Like if you don't have to go above and beyond for your photographer, but if you make them feel personally connected to your wedding, I'm sure Madison goes even harder at shooting, for those couples that really connect with her, and we all do. And so I love that it's a hilarious song. So
it is. Oh my gosh. She's second shot 2 or 3 of my weddings with me so far this year. And there were, I think, 2 of them that played Ignition Remix. And there was one where one of the groomsmen was talking to another groomsman saying, oh my gosh, I wish the DJ would play Ignition Remix. And she literally like busted in between them. It was like, did you just say Ignition Remix? And like, it was so funny. She was like, I'll go request it from the DJ if you want to hear it. She was like, usually I don't do that, but if you want to hear it, I'll go do that. And I was laughing so hard. It was so funny.
Oh man, that's so good. Awesome. Well, Hope, I want to transition into kind of a fun lightning round, which I even feel cheesy saying lightning round, but it's just 3.
Nope, I love it.
Let's 3 fun questions. This is a little bit more about who you are and what you like. And so I want to know your current favorite TV show, what books, if any, you're reading, and any goals you have left for 2017.
Okay, favorite TV show, shamefully, is Bachelor, Bachelorette, Bachelor in Paradise, all of the above. I just love them, and I'm just, super obsessed with them. Books I'm reading, I just finished like a mystery thriller that I'm not even going to remember the name of. And then I read Everything. So those were two of kind of like my for fun books. And I'm also reading The Best Yes, and I'm about to start Present Over Perfect. So I am consistently reading way more than one book. It's a problem. And then what was the last one?
Any goals left for 2017?
Oh, goals. Okay. Yes. So, let me brainstorm which ones I want to share. So I am actually, there's just so many different things I've been like brainstorming for the rest of this year. Definitely number one goal is that I want to launch my 2018 workshop schedule. I'm in the process right now of planning that out and just planning some exciting things for that. So workshop schedule is definitely up there on the list. I am also working on doing some transitions with my senior photography and kind of transitioning more into weddings and just doing some, exciting transitions in that area. And I'm also working on enhancing and improving my wedding client experience with gifting. And I also, this one is just one I checked off the list, but I wanted to hire a virtual assistant for the year. And I just hired her, and she is already changing my life. And I just love her so much. Her name is Emily Yost. For anybody that needs someone, she's going to kill me because she's going to get like a billion emails now, but she deserves it because she's amazing. And I just adore her. So that was probably the biggest one, was hiring a virtual assistant. And she's helping me do all of the other things I just mentioned.
There you go. That's awesome. I just hired a virtual assistant a few months ago, and the same thing kind of went through. It's like, she can take on all these things, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this. And
yeah, exactly.
I feel bad. And she's like, no, Adam, that's my job. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
I know. It's so strange for somebody to be like, actually, I want to do the things that you don't want to do. It's my job to take that stress off of you. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That is awesome. Anyway, hopefully you've had hopefully, that's so funny. Hopefully you've had a good time talking on this podcast. Thanks so much for being on and kind of being transparent. I really appreciate it. And I know that that's kind of the value that you want to bring to people, and people can get to know you better. Where's the best place for us to find you, and your favorite place to kind of engage with others online?
Yeah, so my Instagram is definitely the best place. It's at Hope Taylor Photography. And I know I've talked a lot about like spokesmodel topics and like workshops, and I've mentioned those kind of a few times. You can find information about that type of stuff on my website if anybody wants to. There's like free downloads and a ton of free education there at hopetaylorblog.com. And I also have a spokesmodel course that is actually closed registration right now, but it'll be opening back up here in a couple of months if anybody wanted to learn more about that topic too, just so everybody has touch points for the things we discussed.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Hope.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that was awesome. Thanks so much to Hope for coming on The Bearded Tog. I really appreciate her insight. It's something we don't talk about. It's just like the imposter syndrome. We had an episode on that, but also just people are actually mean and don't think you can do it, or they ask you questions where they're implying that you can't make something happen. And so she's a testament of just hustling and making it happen. And I love that. And I love that she kind of found her niche. I've never photographed. I've only photographed one senior, and that was like 8 years ago. So love her perspective. She is so awesome. Make sure you check her work out. She's really cool. In the meantime, if you're curious about how to edit like me, if you've seen any of my photos and you're like, how does he do that? Or you have business questions that are more specific, or you want to get advice on social media, I give all of that stuff away on the podcast. But in addition, if you want to go deeper, there is the Patreon, which is how you support the podcast and how we can get these awesome guests on the show. And you can go to the link in the show notes and join our Patreon. And any support you can give would be greatly appreciated. And in exchange, you get all the information you could ever want. So thanks so much. Have a wonderful day. Also, bonus ask. Sorry, I'm asking a lot. But if you could leave us a review on iTunes, that would be incredible. They're changing podcast standards, not iTunes, but just the IAB and such, and on what's considered a download. And it would be really, 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 really helpful if you could go leave us a review, even if it's mean. But please don't leave a mean one. But please leave a review. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Email me if you have any questions, or there's somebody that should be on, or you just have more questions. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day, guys.